Hello, everybody. I'm Lisa Shield, and I want to welcome you to Finding the Guardian of Your Soul. It's such a pleasure to be here today. I am thrilled about this topic. It may be one of the most important conversations I've had in a long time with some of you. And we are going to be looking at give me one moment here. We're going to be looking at the yin to his yang, discover femininity by understanding his masculinity. So the first thing is, I have avoided this topic for a long time. And the reason I've avoided it is because anytime something is too cliche and I feel that I'm parroting what other people are saying and not really looking at this through my own lens, I avoid discussing those things. I don't want to perpetuate other people's approaches to things unless I really feel that they're valuable and unless they speak to me. So when I was originally dating, it's been a while. I've been with my husband. We're going on 21 years now. We met online in the very early days of online dating. We met on JDate. And when I met Benjamin, people were not talking so much about this whole masculine, feminine thing. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus was new and novel at the time. And, there were some things out there. Jean Shinola Bowen had her goddesses in every woman. There were there was some discussion about the masculine and the feminine. There was also Pat Allen, who wrote Getting to I Do, who talked a lot about that, and Alison Armstrong, who does something called Celebrating Men, Satisfying Women. She has a whole bunch of courses on masculine, feminine energy. Some of those things were really just starting to come about, but a lot of it just didn't resonate with me. I didn't click with so much of what I was hearing because it all seemed like a lot of stories, a lot of stuff that was just made up. It felt like to me, when I learned about masculine and feminine, I often felt like people were trying to create these boxes that they were putting us in. And none of that really made sense to me. And so when I was dating, I was looking at what it meant to me to be a woman. I had a breakthrough when I was about to turn 40, and I started to realize that I had really rejected being a woman. My dad had left my mother when I was about 8 years old for another woman. He had an affair and then wound up marrying this other woman and left my mother with two very young children. I was 8 and my brother was 10. And it didn't matter, how wealthy we were. It didn't matter what the color of our skin was. None of these things mattered. My dad just up and left and abandoned my mom and me and my brother. I don't know, I wasn't old enough to understand a lot of what went on. I came to learn that my father was an addict and that he wasn't just an alcoholic. There was sex addiction, love addiction. Um, he smoked. There were a whole bunch of things going on. And he just had a very, very, very deeply ingrained addictive behavior. And if you know anything about addiction, it kind of bounces around from one thing to another. So even if you stop drinking, then it can come up in debting or gambling, or it just keeps resurfacing in a different form. So my dad was definitely a candidate for SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, but his primary program was alcoholism. So he cheated on my mother. He wound up cheating on his second wife with another woman who he then married. So it was a behavior that I don't think that my mother was powerless against it, but she was also very codependent, and it was messy. It was really, really messy. And watching this as a very young girl, I made an agreement with myself that I would never let a man do to me what my father did to my mother. And that was a very conscious choice. I remember saying it to myself. And then as I grew up in the, late 70s, came of age during the sexual revolution. And I just told myself I can do anything a man can do. And in a lot of ways, it was true. I could have my career, I could be sexually liberated. I didn't have to be married in order to have relationships and sexual relationships. And I also wasn't of a faith where I was taught that it was wrong and that I couldn't have sex outside of marriage. And so a lot of my behaviors became extremely masculine. And I also pushed away, I rejected anything that was feminine because I saw women as being weak, and I saw women as being easily exploited by men, especially women who had children. It's probably one of the reasons I never wanted to have a family. I never did have kids, um, probably because I saw what that did to my mother and how restricted she was, no matter what my brother and I brought to her life. She still was stuck in that time with two young children that she pretty much wound up raising on her own. It was a very unfortunate thing. My mother died at 40 of breast cancer. She got sick when she was, I think, 34. And my brother and I went on to live with my grandmother, her mother. So my mom had a really tough life, got sick very young and died very young. And I made an agreement with myself that I was never going to let a man take advantage of me like that. The problem is I wanted a wonderful relationship. I was longing for that. I didn't have it with my father. We never ever were able to connect in a healthy way and really overcome some of these things, probably partly because of his addiction issues and because I was very hurt, and um he also married, his third wife was about 10 years younger than me, and then they wound up having a daughter together. And so there were a lot of reasons why my dad and I just never really connected. We never had a relationship. Because of that, I wanted to find a partner. And when I was entering my 40s, I had left my first marriage, which I clung to and stayed in for way too long, much longer than I should have. And I stayed because I was so afraid I'd be alone for the rest of my life. We didn't have internet dating. We didn't have the options that people have today to connect. I know they don't seem always like the best options, but when I was younger, the only way we met was in real life through work or school or friends or whatever. And it wasn't always easy for me because I was acting so masculine, and I could, meet men who were interested in having sex with me. but I was not comfortable connecting with men in any other way because I was basically acting like a man. I wasn't acting like a woman. A lot of us have this fantasy that we're going to meet the right guy and he's going to bring out that feminine side of us and we're just going to surrender into our femininity and all. But it really doesn't happen that way for most people. And especially as we get older and we build up more and more walls and we have more and more negative experiences with men, more disappointments, it often happens that those walls just get thicker and thicker and thicker. And we, instead of becoming more open, we become less open. We become more masculine and less feminine as a way of protecting ourselves. So I realized that in the back of my mind, I had always been longing for one of my relationships to blossom into something more. But because I had these thick walls up and I was so afraid of being vulnerable and feminine, I never could find a man who treated me the way I wanted to be treated because most men didn't feel like there was an opportunity for them to do that with me. So I had a kind of awakening and I realized that I was not in touch with what it meant to me to be a woman. And I decided to begin to explore that. Who was I as a woman? What did it mean to me to be a woman? What kind of woman did I even want to be? What did I feel my gifts were? Where did I feel my deficits were as a woman? And as I started to explore that, I believe that I began to develop my own way of looking at femininity and what it meant to me to be a woman. I started to see that if I wanted a man to take the lead, I had to let him. I couldn't, say, oh, you plan the date and then tell him how he could have done it better. Instead, I needed to say, I would love it if you would plan a date. And then I needed to tell him what a great job he did and make him feel good about what he had done. And even if I didn't love his choices or whatever, I started to learn how to very diplomatically and lovingly make suggestions without shaming men, without putting them down. And instead of asking myself, is this masculine behavior or feminine behavior? I just began to ask myself, is this attractive behavior? If I say this or if I do that, will a man be more attracted to me or less attracted? And so it really became this beautiful exploration of how to begin to draw men closer and open up and be more vulnerable and start to let go of some of these masculine behaviors. I've also subsequently learned that if you're acting like a man, then men will treat you like a man. And if you're acting like a woman, men will treat you like a woman. We had one of the women who is in our coaching program. We have 3 different levels. We have an introductory program, and then we have a mid-tier program, and then we have our highest level, which is a mastermind group. And one of the women in the mastermind group, she's so beautiful, just the cutest thing you ever saw. And she really had a breakthrough about a week ago where she had sent some dismissive text to a guy, and then we coached her through it. We showed her how he was actually a very sweet guy, and she had misinterpreted some of the messages he had sent to her. And so she repaired it and went on a date with him. And she came back and she just said, "Oh my God, not only did I go out with him, but I went out with another man." And she said, "Lisa, I'm just being so feminine And I'm just, I'm squeezing their muscles and I'm asking them for their help. And she said, it's so sweet. She said, they love to help you fix your car. And so she had an oil leak and was asking their advice. And the guys were like, oh, I'm so good with cars and, making suggestions and explaining what was happening and why she had this leak. And it was just so cute. And she said, I never knew how much fun this was. And these guys will do anything. And it's really, really sweet. She's like, I've been so worried that no guy would do these kinds of things for me. And now I'm trying all the suggestions you've been making, and they're tripping over themselves to try to make me happy and to do more and more things for me. And she said, it's really like taking candy from a baby. It's, once you get the hang of it, it's lovely. So it's about taking down these walls and stepping into becoming a woman, not a man, but really opening up and learning how to receive from men. So, the title of this talk is Discover Femininity by Understanding Masculinity, right? And I love, love, love this approach, which is really my approach. I think that there is a symbiosis, to this process. It's not like I'm going to act feminine or I'm going to just be in my feminine. This is really a kind of dance that men and women do together. If you don't understand masculinity and you're just being feminine, it's going to come across as an act. You're putting on an act because you're just acting in feminine ways. For me, the deepest and most beautiful way to connect with men is by first understanding who they are, understanding what masculinity is, and being able to then become the kind of woman who can bring that out in a man. So there are many, many, many women, myself included. When I was younger, I just kept waiting for that super masculine guy to come along who would make me feel feminine, but I didn't know anything about masculinity and how to be responsive to it. So, femininity and masculinity are something that happen in tandem, and we draw this out in each other. And it's not just about sitting and waiting for a man to bring your femininity out, but it's also about you knowing how to draw out his masculinity. And as you do that, your femininity will start to emerge in the process of doing that. Does everybody get this? I'm curious if this makes sense to all of you. This isn't something that you just, go out and into the world and you're just like, okay, I'm going to just dress up pretty. I'm going to do my hair and my nails and I'm going to look all pretty. And then I'm going to wait for the right guy to come along and I'm just going to feel so feminine. First of all, a lot of those guys who really know how to make you feel feminine, many of those guys are putting on a show. A lot of those men are the avoidant guys, they're the seducers, they're the romancers, and they know how to do that, but it's not authentic. They're trying to get you into bed. They're trying to love bomb you. A lot of men, especially the guys that come on too hard and are not sincere, these men who are very, very good at seduction, those men are going to be the ones who are the players. And the problem is, if you're just sitting there waiting for these guys who bring out your femininity because you don't know how to be feminine on your own, those men are most likely you're going to fall for players. And if you do find yourself constantly falling, like if you're a woman who's like, how come I keep picking these emotionally unavailable men or these guys that just come on really strong and then ghost me? That's probably because you're sitting there looking for these really, these guys that are seducers and know how to come on strong, but they don't know how to have relationships. And so those are the guys that you keep falling for. And you need to look at that because, as I said earlier, there is a symbiosis to this. You need to also participate. You're not, a lot of women today have this idea that, oh, well, I'm a woman and I deserve a real man. And that means that a real man is going to do this and that and pay for the date and blah, 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 blah. But like you're going to do nothing, but, get dressed for the date and show up on time and sit there and be pretty and a good listener. And the guy is going to like know when to move in for the kiss, how to take you to a beautiful meal, how to plan the right date. He's going to be doing all the seducing and the planning and all the heavy lifting, and you're just going to fall in love with him. That's not how it works. If you want to have a healthy relationship and you want to have a really beautiful male, masculine, feminine dynamic, then it starts with learning about masculinity, not just learning how you become feminine, but learning what draws out a man's masculine side. So you need to do your part just as much as he needs to do his part. So let's talk about like what are some of the things that a woman who really understands how to make a man feel like a man, let's talk about what those some of those things would be. Does anybody know? You might want to send me a message or let me know. I'd love to get some feedback from some of you who are listening. How do you make a man feel like a man when he's on a date? What do you do to draw out a man's masculinity? What are some of the things that you feel really make a man go home after a date with you and say, oh my God, this woman's amazing? I'm curious what you all know. I can give you all the answers, but I'm curious to hear from some of you what you think those answers are. So I'll give you one way that you can make a man's world bigger and make him one of the ways you can make a man feel more masculine is by learning how to make his world bigger. So what does that mean? What do think about? Why would it be important to know how to make a man's world bigger? Why would that be so important to a man? So when I met my husband, nobody gave me a script. Nobody told me what to say. This literally came out of just love and respect for this amazing man that I had met. I told him one day, I said, Benjamin, I want your world to be bigger because I'm in it, not smaller. I want you to feel like you can be more of who you are, not less. And I want to support you in being and doing all the things that you feel you need to do in this life. And I told him that because one of the things I had observed about women is that we allow our insecurities to get in the way, our disappointments, our past failures. And what many of us try to do is we try to control men and make their world smaller. We're covetous of their time. We're insecure. We need compliments all the time. We need, you know, we really try, many women do this. We're highly dramatic. We can control them and manipulate them emotionally. We need constant feedback that, to make us feel more secure and safe in the relationship. And so there's many behaviors that women exhibit that I observed other women and myself exhibiting in relationships that really made made men's world smaller and caused men to feel like they were giving up very important things in order to be with us. And that a lot of women never really acknowledged or appreciated those things. Many of the women I observed just expected that men should do those things. There's a lot that a man gives up. One of a man's greatest fears, if you take nothing else away from this talk but this, a man's greatest fear in getting into a relationship is losing his freedom. That is his greatest fear, having to give up on his dreams because a woman doesn't support them, or because he has to do what feels safe so that he can provide for her and their children. A lot of women expect men to do these things and do not acknowledge that they're giving up their dreams because they have to take more secure and stable jobs that are more predictable. And so they can't do the things they dream of doing, but they do it out of love, and they do it because it's a very masculine thing to want to protect and take care of a family. Now, I get it, though. A man may choose to do those things for you because he loves you, but it's still underneath that he's probably giving up certain freedoms in order to be with you and to protect you and provide for you. Men are also concerned about giving up their sexual freedom, knowing that you may be the only woman and the last woman he's ever intimate with. And that's another huge sacrifice for a man, that many women just expect that a man will do that, but they don't really appreciate the fact that he does it. So these are things that are really important to acknowledge when you're with a man, because it is so important that you appreciate what a man is doing for you and not just take these things for granted. And a big one, a big way of making a man's world bigger is listening to, asking about, and supporting his dreams. Many women feel threatened by a man's dreams. If he were to say to you, I really dream of playing baseball, being a baseball player. It's not like he's going to quit his day job and go and become a professional baseball player, but it might mean that he wants to go to baseball camp or something, for a few weeks, and that'll scratch that itch for him. Or maybe he just wants to be able to watch the game on Sunday, just kick back and watch his favorite team, and you curl up next to him, on the sofa and just snuggle up and watch it with him, even if you don't love baseball. So you can ask about and support his dreams. You never want to question them and say, well, why do you feel that way? Not a good thing to do, because if you do that, he's going to think that you feel that his dreams are silly or stupid. You want to say, wow, that's an amazing dream. Tell me about that. I'd love to know more. And just know that most of the time, he's never even gonna act out. He's never gonna even try to fulfill that dream. He may just be talking about his dream and dreaming with you and sharing these things because they're things that he'd love to do. But how many things do you have on your list that you would love to do, right? That you're never going to get around to doing. Something that I think women really need to know regarding supporting each other's dreams is that most men will support a woman's dreams and really try to help her fulfill those dreams because they want to make us happy. And this is something I've seen with my husband. He goes above and beyond to support me. It's really crazy to see what he'll do for me and how loving and supportive he is. But this man will do anything for me, anything to support my dreams, anything. And in some ways, when I look back over our lives together, it's really unbelievable to see the sacrifices he's made so that I could build my career and become the woman I am today. I never would have done this career. In fact, he's the one who said to me, you should be a coach or a therapist. And he's the one that actually supported me in building this career. He even works with me now um, in my business, and he writes the profiles for the women, and he's just been amazing. He's been amazing. Amazing. So understanding a man's dreams is another way of bringing out his masculine side. So there's some really great suggestions here. Appreciating his opening doors and chairs. It's a big one. Appreciation. So few women have gratitude and really appreciate all the things that men do. And, one of the most beautiful things you can say to a man is, thank you. Thank you. Men go through their lives, they go to work, they're competitive in their jobs, they worry about losing their jobs and losing their identities. And, just to hear thank you and to have somebody recognize their efforts is huge. Another really important thing that you can do for a man is somebody listed this here, respect. So a lot of women are very surprised to hear that m- most men will say they would rather feel respected by a woman than loved. They would rather feel respected by a woman than loved. Now, I know we all want respect. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you that. But if you ask most women, the number one thing they would say is they want to feel loved by their partner. If you ask most men, they're going to say they want to feel respected. And respect is deeply connected to his masculine side, right? When he feels respected by the woman he loves, you want to talk about being able to bring out the masculinity in your guy. Oh my God. And if you were to hang out with my husband and me, you would be blown away if you heard the way I speak to him. I'll never forget, Marianne Williamson was talking about a movie that she saw. I can't remember. I think Blythe Danner and somebody they were playing a couple. And the way they spoke to each other, most people would have thought it was really silly, but they called each other, yes, Mrs. Smith, or no, Mr. Smith. And they had this sort of beautiful, respectful, deferential way of addressing each other. And Marianne Williamson was saying that there was a time where she would have seen a film like that and just thought, oh my God, that is the stupidest thing I ever saw. But when she watched this film, she said she really realized the respect that this couple had for each other. And it was so beautiful the way that they spoke to one another and the way they called each other, Mr. Smith and Mrs. Smith. Um, Somebody asked, how do you show respect? I think that, with my husband, I look at all the things that I know Benjamin takes pride in, all the things that he is so proud of. I know his values. I know what matters to him. And then I compliment him on those things. So that's one way of showing him respect. I know that my husband has tremendous integrity, and I will often say to him, you have more integrity than any man I've ever met, and I so admire that about you. So I point out whenever he's doing something that I know he takes pride in, that he values, I acknowledge those things. I also I'll give you an example. There are things that Benjamin says, this is what I want. And I honor those things. I don't question them. I don't think they're silly or stupid. If something matters to him, then it matters. For example, very often he had, not anymore, but since we've moved to Santa Fe, but when we lived in Los Angeles, Benjamin worked long, long, long hours. And at the end of a day, after he'd been working all day, he'd go into the kitchen, and that's when he'd really zone out. I mean, he would just eat over the sink. He'd eat from a can, you know, uh, we wouldn't necessarily sit down to dinner. And he just needed to be alone. And even though I may not have seen him or talked to him much throughout the day, when he was in the kitchen, if I walked in the kitchen and I saw him decompressing, I would just walk right out. Whatever I had to say could wait. But I knew, because he had told me, that he just needed that alone time to decompress in the kitchen and just be alone so that he could just, you know, cycle through the day. I would give him that space. Um, if I'm talking and I'm going on and on about something and I look at him and I see his eyes glazing over, I stop and I just say, you know what, this can wait. We can talk about this later. So other things, he's told me, don't leave knives on the kitchen sink. He has a fear that, he works with his hands and he's very afraid of a knife falling or cutting him, getting knocked off the sink or something, not the sink, but off the countertop. And so I very consciously do not leave sharp knives laying out, because he's told me that he doesn't want me to. So I really listen to what he tells me, and I do those things for him. He's also let me know never to have somebody come and sing happy birthday to him, in a restaurant at the table. So that will never happen. And he's made it clear that he never wants a surprise party. A lot of times men will say, I don't like surprise parties. And then women think it's cute to throw him a surprise party. I will never, ever, ever throw Benjamin a surprise party. So things like that, I just, whatever he says, I don't question it. If it's something he doesn't like, then I just honor his wishes. And he really, really, really appreciates that. I also empower him and encourage him to take the lead in the relationship. And then I acknowledge him when he does that. I acknowledge him when he does that. So those are ways that I show respect. I listen, and when he says this is what I need, I make sure that I do those things for him. When he says, I reflect back the things I see him doing that I know he takes pride in, and I'm just always supportive of him. I'm always supportive of his dreams, whatever that is, whatever it is. If he needs to go away to Europe and teach for 3 weeks or 6 weeks, I create a space for him to do that. If he wants me to come along, I come with him. If he needs to go on his own, I let him go on his own and I don't make an issue about it. So those are the ways I show Benjamin respect. And I think those things work with anyone. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Paul, good to see you here. I want to thank you for joining me. I will be doing more on this topic. I'll be sharing other ways to make a man feel like a man. Paul wrote a beautiful comment. I want to share this. He said, "You're one of a kind. It seems women these days are totally opposite." Paul, I think that in our hearts, we really all want to just connect. I love this picture, by the way, of you with your baby and that smile on your face. I don't know if that's your child or whatever, but that's a beautiful photograph. Um, I think that we all have to really learn how to love and appreciate each other. If I were having a conversation with men, I would be teaching men how to be more loving and, more masculine with women. So thank you. It's taken me years and years and years to learn these things, to develop the relationship I have with Benjamin, who I call the guardian of my soul. And please, if anyone wants to learn more about the work that we do, go to lisashield.com and click the button there. It's all over the page. You can watch my free 45-minute webinar. If you like what you hear and you think you might want our help in finding the guardian of your soul, you can listen to the end of that video, and then we will jump on a call with you and talk to you about how you can become one of our clients. We also do another broadcast on Sundays. I do that one with my husband. It's called Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. We would love your feedback. If you like this podcast, please let us know. If you don't like us, we're grown adults. We can take it. Let us know how we can improve things. And if you have suggestions for future topics, please send them to podcast@lisashield.com. Paul, I think, society does want men to be masculine. There's a lot of toxic masculinity today. And, there's a lot of toxic femininity. I think these are topics that we really need to be talking about more and more, how, women and men can find a better way of connecting with one another. I may do a broadcast on healthy masculinity. My husband is such a great example of that. And if you want to learn more, I highly recommend watching our broadcast on Sundays, Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. You'll really learn a lot there. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your day. Please come back and see us again, see me again. And just know, never give up on love. The guardian of your soul is out there. And if you want our help, we would love to show you how we can help you find your person in 12 weeks. Bye bye. I'm Lisa Shield. Come back and see me again.